we all have the limitations in our own heads about how we're supposed to do things, what they're supposed to play out like, how are we supposed to show up to our own life and the life of others. And then we have the way that relates to other people. Now, Sophie and I have done this work a lot. Ironically, Sophie has been the one who's told me for, I'll call it 5 years, but it's probably closer to 10, and I'm just shorting the length. Hey, you need to get out more. You need to do things other than sitting in your office and just working. We're still parents to 3 children. So it sounds really, really nice in theory. Making that happen was not necessarily going to be really, really easy. So when she chimed in and said, hey, I love this, this sounds like a great idea, it at least gave me the thumbs up to explore the option.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Sophie Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero?
%99 of the time when you see me in doing one of these groups, I'm at home in this little studio that we've created, and every once in a while I'm traveling. 90% of those travel trips are work trips. So I'm either at a conference or I'm speaking somewhere, something like that. Here right now, I'm not. I'm with a friend. He owns a cabin that's about 2 hours away from where I normally live. And he invited me to come out on this trip. And first of all, because if you can calculate from the percentages I talked about earlier, because less than 1% of the time am I actually not home when I need to work. And the part of myself, and some of you who've been with me for a while know the part of myself that learned early on in my childhood that the way you show you're serious and you're really showing up to life is by being busy and working all the time. Even the invite itself created this conflict for me. And the reason it created conflict was, honestly, it sounded like I was going to be goofing around. It sounded like if I'm going to say yes to this invite, I'm going to be lazy. Right? I'm showing myself to be lazy. I obviously have work. I'm going to go on this trip. So the first part that I want to present here as an option is the work I had to do, the pretzeling of my own mind that I had to do to get myself to a point where I was considering seriously saying yes to the invite. That was number one. In case you're not aware, I don't live alone. I have a wife and 3 children. So part of that process had to do with how is this going to impact them, for sure. But even once I made the decision myself, the second part was trying to figure out how to make it happen. And then I want to present what actually happened right before I actually left, which made the whole thing even more complicated. So I'll start with the beginning. And that is, I'm using what's going on for me as an example for what I know happens to so many of us, right? We have good intention. We want to change behaviors in our lives. We want to change the scripts and the way we show up to life. Well, it's good theoretically, but then when something shows up, an opportunity, a way to behave shows up in life that is not aligned with the way you normally do things, it's really uncomfortable, right? There was nothing inherently uncomfortable about a good friend, recent friend, but a good friend inviting me to go on a 2-day trip, working trip. He's working here too. It's not like we're bumming around, but it was so out of the ordinary for me. The first feeling was anxiety about it. That was the first thing I felt about it. I liked the guy. This sounded like a fun trip. There was, I was going to get all my work done. I knew I would handle what I needed to handle. The discomfort was just because it was unfamiliar, but it was real discomfort because I don't do this. And so I remember he gave me the invite. I didn't respond for like 45 minutes or an hour. I didn't respond to the text because I had to think to myself. I went and looked at my schedule. I looked at what I had to do that day, the night before, the night after, in case something else would happen. And it got to a point where I said, oh, well, I can do this. And then that was the first time I responded. It was on a 3-way text actually with my wife as well. So after I responded, she added the second piece of the equation, which was, I love this for you guys. This sounds like a great idea, which connects to the next piece. And that is, we all have the limitations in our own heads about how we're supposed to do things, what they're supposed to play out like, how How are we supposed to show up to our own life and the life of others? And then we have the way that relates to other people. Now, Sophie and I have done this work a lot. Ironically, Sophie has been the one who's told me for, I'll call it 5 years, but it's probably closer to 10, and I'm just shorting the length. Hey, you need to get out more. You need to do things other than sitting in your office and just working. We're still parents to 3 children. So it sounds really, really nice in theory. Making that happen was not necessarily going to be really, really easy. So when she chimed in and said, hey, I love this. This sounds like a great idea. It at least gave me the thumbs up to explore the option, right? Makes sense. I want to do this. Now my wife is saying, it's an option. I can actually handle it. Oh, great. So we were planning, preparing for this trip. And yesterday, all 3 of our kids got sick. First, my daughter went down with like 103-degree fever from the night before. Didn't sleep through the night. Sophie had a horrible night. Then my middle child stayed away from school. So 2 kids not in school yesterday. Third one went to school. Today, all 3 stayed home. They're all sick. So now I wake up this morning. Already yesterday, I'm packing up and I'm thinking to myself, shit. We prepared, we planned, all that kind of stuff, but we weren't planning for 3 sick kids at home. And to me, again, right, this is such a simple concept, but until it actually hits you, it feels differently inside. You can do all the planning in life, and then life acts. The world does what it wants to do. And we were literally, my wife and I last night were faced with this thing. I'm going away for 2 days. Yes, it's a work trip, but it's really a guy's trip that has work attached to it. And I'm leaving her at home with 3 sick kids. So we talked about it. And I said, are we still okay with me going on this trip? And she said, yeah, look, you need it. And you being here is not really going to help me all that much. You'll just be downstairs in the garage, the basement, kind of where my office is, working most of the time anyway. So I think this is more important. It's more important for you to go than for you to stay here. And I'm going to do whatever I can over the day to support her and help her remotely in whatever I can. But even this morning, as I'm loading the things into the car, I felt guilt and I felt discomfort and I felt unsure about whether this is the right thing to do. And the reason I wanted to start us off this way is it'll happen over and over and over for many of us, that even when we're making the right choices, even when we're expanding, even when we're growing, if the growth involves change, which it almost always does, there will be moments of little tests, little instances as you make those growth opportunities, those moments of change real. There will be massive moments of anxiety and doubt. And if you're like I used to be, and maybe still challenged, but to a much lesser extent with that now, you try to solve all those problems in your own head. You don't tell anybody about them, right? You don't tell your partner that you're anxious about this trip. You don't wonder out loud what it's going to feel like because you feel this, you have to hold it all together yourself. But what I found is that if we try to keep it all inside, it gets so much more difficult to push through the discomfort because we rely on how we know to do things. You have a way, I have a way of showing up to work every day. I work out in the morning, I go make breakfast for the family, I walk downstairs to my office and work for the rest of the day. It doesn't sound that complicated, but it doesn't matter. That's how I do things every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, for years, right? Like 4 or 5 years. This is what I've been doing as I started IGNTD. It's what I know how to do. So anything different feels strange, but oftentimes we let strange equate to bad. And then we don't do those things, even if when we're here and we know we don't like this, we know we want different, we want change, we want to adjust, we want to grow. When the growth opportunity comes up, it feels anxiety provoking and strange. We go, I don't like this, let me go back here. And it's that game that a lot of us play. I always joke, people always say, because we're here for addiction, people always say, you know, quitting is so hard. People who don't, and I said, quitting's not hard. I've quit a million times. Like, that's easy. It's what happens when other shit comes up in life that makes me feel uncomfortable. The hard thing is not to go back. That's a difficult thing. It's not going back to what we know how to do. We can quit. we can't go, going back and forth is a part that proves difficult. So this morning I was challenged coming up against this opportunity for growth, right? Doing something that is great. It's going to be connecting. It's not a good thing to be stuck in an office, for all your life, just working. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your back. It's not good for a lot of things, but I knew this would be good for me. And yet I was uncomfortable because of the situation I was leaving. And it was in my conversation with my wife, now that we understand each other and we've done this work now for over a decade, that I was able to see, yes, this is uncomfortable, and yet it's the right thing to do, move forward.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.